our newest project with LMEA called 12 for 12. This is a 12 for 12 plus, and what we're doing here is we're featuring some of our most talented, most successful people that have a connection to Louisiana. Many of the people on the screen right here, our panelists, are from Louisiana, have family in Louisiana, and we are concentrating on this event of giving you a little background information, a little insight into what really goes on in the Broadway and opera world. What is it like to get there, to be that star? What is it like to be in the business? What happens when you're in the business? So we have a great panelist here today, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank everybody for being here. So we're going to start with Andre, Joey, and Greg. Could you kind of quickly introduce yourself? Tell everybody who you are, kind of a little bit about your bio and your pathway to this genre of music. We'll go ahead and start with Andre.
Hey, I'm Andre Courville. I'm from Cecilia, Louisiana, and I'm an international soloist in opera. I grew up playing piano and organ and started singing when I was in high school. And yeah, worked hard and eventually built my career, travel around the world singing, and yeah, that's what it's about.
All right, let's go to Joey. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Of course. Yeah, I was born and raised in Monroe, Louisiana. And in 2006, I moved to New York City. And I've been working as a musician ever since. And until the COVID shutdown last March, I was the assistant conductor and one of the keyboard players in the Broadway orchestra of Beetlejuice the Musical. And now I am in a holding pattern until theaters are allowed to reopen.
All right, Greg Oden.
Well, my name is Greg Oden. I'm the LMEA vocal chairman. I'm an educator of 32 years. I've conducted choirs in St. Peter's Basilica, Carnegie Hall, Notre Dame, a bunch of different places, and I've gotten to conduct or work with a lot of these fine artists that are on our panel, and I'm really excited to be here.
So great that you said that, Greg. There's this dream versus reality in your world, and even really if you think of Nashville and country music artists and pop artists, mainstream artists, where you get this Hollywood version, right, of I'm going to move to the big city, I'm going to play on a street corner for a little bit, and then Lifetime movie says that some big producer is going to come and notice me. He's going to sign me to a multi-million-dollar contract, right into the sunset, the end. I don't know if it really, if that's the story that is true. It may be for some people, but my experience in just general music is that it takes a lot of hard work, right? Some luck involved, as Garth Brooks said on his his Netflix series, that there is some luck involved. So Andre, being a Broadway, an opera musician, what is your pathway, man? What could you tell our audience, which would be college students, high school students, aspiring musicians, aspiring vocalists into the field? What could you tell them about that dream versus reality? What are some of the hard facts that you realized?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I'm happy I chose this path, but I think I often think I wish someone would have told me how difficult it would be and how long it would take, especially for a bass, low voices. It just takes a lot longer for their voices to mature and for them to build up, good careers. And you really have to sacrifice a lot. You're traveling all the time. You can't have a family. You can't have, it's very hard to have relationships. I mean, you can do it, but at a certain point, you have to put opera first if that's what you really want to do, and just focus 100% on. Then when your career takes off, you have a little room to do other things. But it's you have to go in 110%, or it's not really going to work. It's a lot about sacrifice. But I do believe too that if you work hard for anything, you can have it. As long as you put in the effort. But it's. I think I thought I was gonna do my stuff and it's just gonna be golden, and I'm a star, and it's fine. You really have to put in your dues. You have to do the young artist programs. You have to do the grunt work. You have to sing in the choruses. And it's also, you know, when I'm not on an opera job, I'm studying for my next job. I'm studying music. You're never really off. You know, you're constantly working on the next thing, and it's a lot of work. I mean, it's fun. You know, we love what we do. You can't do it. Nobody sticks with opera if they don't really love it. You have to. That's, you know, that's how difficult it is. But it's rewarding in the end. Very fulfilling.
So, you know, you just mentioned it's, as musicians, we never feel we're there, right? We never feel, man, I made it. And the minute we ever feel that way, then life's going to kick us in the rear, and then it's going to, you know, we have two options, right? We could work even harder, or we won't have a job in the future. So being that we understand, man, I'm still working at my craft. Andre, did you ever feel that moment of, I've kind of arrived, I feel like I'm in a really good place where I'm successful? And when did that happen for you, coming from your starting point, say, I don't know, college time?
Yeah. Well, I've had some good moments. I've sung at Carnegie Hall several times. My debut was a special moment for me, and it was you know, it's a moment I really thought I'm on the right track. I didn't think, okay, I'm here, I can coast now, you know, but I said, okay, we're starting out the right way. And I graduated from the Academy of Vocal Arts in Philadelphia in 2017. And right after my graduation, I made my debut in Europe, singing Figaro, one of my favorite roles, in Germany. And then I went to Dallas Opera, made my debut there, my American debut at Dallas Opera, which is an excellent, you know, it's an A house here. And so, you know, I think around then I thought, well, okay, you know, I put in the work, I did something right. It's finally starting to pay off. And I've been really lucky since then. I've had really great debuts, and you know, I still have some good debuts coming up. So I feel like I'm on the right track. I mean, you know, we're artists are so hard on themselves too. You know, you never feel like you're there, you can't do better. You know, you always want to do better, make yourself a better artist, better singer. And I think that's something that you do until you die. You know, no great artist ever says, okay, I'm good now, I can stop working. You know, it's something we're always just trying to be better and better.
That's great, man. Hey, we're going to throw it over to Joey Joseph in New York/New Jersey. Joey, introduce yourself, man, a little background, and love to hear from you, man. What is your experience about this dream versus reality? Because I know you have a pretty unique story about how your career actually got started.
Yeah. I mean, so I was in lessons in Monroe, piano lessons, I think when I was 4. I started playing by ear when I was 3.
Child prodigy.
Yeah, hardly. But teachers, my mom and dad were trying to find someone to take me on in lessons, and everyone kept saying, like, he's way too young. You know, let's hold off. And so finally, when I was 4, she finally got a teacher named Jane Joseph, who oddly is not of relation to me. But she finally, she invited me over, and I played something I'd heard on TV or whatever. And she started taking me twice a week for 15 minutes. Cause I was, you know, 4, couldn't sit still barely even for 15 minutes for a lesson or whatever. But I stayed in lessons until college, did a semester in piano, and with it all being so classical based, I ended up leaving. I think it was a you know, mutual decision between me and the teachers, because by that point in time, I decided that I wanted to probably pursue musical theater instead. And so I left, waited a while, saved up money and worked and everything, and then I moved to New York, which was great. I mean, it was hard coming from such a small town with not a lot of connection to New York. So I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any ends to the business. I didn't know how anything worked. All I knew was what I wanted to do. And so I just kind of leaped and said, well, you know, here we go. And I learned quickly that there's not one specific pathway. You know, I'd heard a lot of people give their opinions on how you get there and what you have to do and this and that. And I learned so quickly that everyone gets it a different way. some people get it by chance, some people work really hard at it, some people never get it. It's just, it's such a crapshoot. But the story of how I got my first job was the national tour of Elton John's Aida, and there was an ad on Playbill for a guitar player, which is interesting because usually musician jobs just aren't advertised. It's usually a networking thing. And I emailed them and I said, I'm brand new to New York City. I'm 26 years old and I play keyboard, not guitar. Thanks. They wrote back that night. And I mean, I even then, like, I wasn't naive enough to think like, this could be something. I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever done. Like, they're never going to respond to me. And they wrote back that night and they were like, we actually just lost one of our keyboard players. We're having auditions on Thursday. Can you be here? And I was like, sure. So I went and I was in my little loafers and my little pants and my little tie, and everybody else, there was like 10 other guys there and they were all just like in jeans and t-shirts. And I look like I'm, selling pencils door to door. And I ended up getting it, oddly enough. And 2 months later we were in rehearsals, and then I was on tour for I think 9 months with that show, and then stayed on tour for like 4 more years with Hairspray and then Color Purple, and then finally packed the loafers away. And then I've just been working in New York City doing Broadway shows ever since, basically.
So you're a little bit different from the people that we have on the screen, is that you're not a vocalist. Your main instrument is piano, right?
Sure, yeah.
And some conducting as well. So, what was it that attracted you to musical theater? And word on the street is that you've got some really mad piano skills. So what did you work on to be able to change key signatures at a moment's notice and to kind of have a diverse background and not strictly classical?
I mean, I wouldn't even put classical on my list at all. It's so beyond what I'm good at. That's just, I would never tout that as a great skill of mine. Repeat the question. I feel like there was like 3 questions in there.
Yeah, I kind of threw a little bit at you. What drove you to have such an interest in musical theater?
Sure. I didn't grow up loving theater. I did a little bit of like community theater because my parents would, stick us in like summer programs at the local community theater or whatever, but I didn't know that like being a musician was a thing. I didn't know where it would go. And I think it was in 95 or 96. By that point, we would go see shows that came through town, or we would go over to Dallas because at Fair Park, Dallas Summer Musicals, they would get the big tours, whereas Monroe didn't get them very often. And if they did, it was like for one night, and they were the smaller tours. And so we went to see a lot of them, and one of them being Phantom of the Opera. And I remember looking down into the pit before the show, and I looked down, I looked at my dad, I was like, do they get paid for this? He was like, I don't know. I was like, I think I want to do that. That looks really cool. And it never left me. And then from that point, I was like, I'm going to find out more about this. And just the longer it went on, it just ended up being what I really honestly, the more I started getting into theater and listening to theater and all that, I just decided one day, I was like, I think that's what I actually want to do. I would look in the CD inserts of cast albums, and I would see people's names in there, and I was like, God, I want my name to be on a CD. Like, I want to play on one of those. So that was kind of the ultimate goal.
And so for you, there was that light bulb moment.
Yeah, big time.
And that is pretty unique. Not well, I guess a few people might have that, but for me, it was. I just want to, it was a science teacher who asked me, "What do you think you want to do?" I was a senior in high school, I really don't know, and think about the things that I was really good at. My claim to fame in sports was that I knew Kevin Falk, LSU Patriots running back.
Right.
That was it. As far as sports, that wasn't it. I said, well, I kind of play this trumpet thing, and maybe I could be some kind of band director, but there was no light bulb moment for me. So, Greg, you already introduced yourself, right? You're a unique experience here. You're the go-between of the dreamers, right? And being the person who has to mold and shape these young aspiring vocalists How do you manage that when they maybe come to you and say, I want to do this, and you have to play maybe good guy or bad guy? I mean, what is it like in your world to be able to have a Joey or an Arnold or a Kelly and Andre in your program versus somebody who maybe you don't think they're ready for that yet?
Well, I think that what a number of students kind of, they come in thinking that they want to instantaneously become, because of The Voice or American Idol, they think if they just do this, then I'm instantaneously become famous. And I think that sometimes there's a saying that goes, hard work pays out when talent doesn't work hard. So a lot of really talented people don't work as hard as that kid that really, really has drive. Now, for me as an educator, I hope I'm receptive to the idea of trying to help kids reach their dreams, or at least propel them that way. It's a difficult situation sometimes when you're trying to visit with someone and say, look, you know, your voice is not as big as Pavarotti's, but you can make a living. You can make a living doing this. I've had a number of students that were not the lead characters in a Broadway show, but they were in the chorus, and they were great chorus people, and they were dancers, and they made a comfortable living. I think that what it's difficult for educators is always trying to find that person. And yeah, you could possibly be discovered on the street corner, but you could also be struck by lightning or win the lottery. Those are probably the same kind of odds. I think that you find someone that has the same drive as you. If you're a voice person, you find someone that hears what you're doing with your voice and can work with you to help you get there. And then you have to always be ready to sing. Like if someone asks you to sing on, you know, in the middle of a restaurant, I had a student that was in a boy band, and literally Charles Billingsley asked him to sing one night in the middle of a concert, and he stood up and sang, and he got a gig with New Song that evening just because he was willing to sing and he was prepared. You have to be prepared. When they ask you, you get a shot, but you better be prepared when you get that shot.
How diverse, Greg, is, well, how important is it to be diverse in your craft?
Oh, I think that a lot of times kids think that if I just sing well, then I've got it made. But you have to be a musician, because you could get a gig being the voice of Build-A-Bear, where you just run in there and they give you copy and you sing. You have to be able to read. I mean, we are music educators, and I try to get kids to understand, if someone walks in the room and they read and you don't, the reader's going to get the job if they have the same voice. So you have to be a good musician as well as a good singer. A lot of talented kids can sing, but then when they're presented with that, can you sing this part for background vocals on this particular album? Can you take the vibrato out of your voice? Can you tune this up? Do you know how to sing a 4-measure phrase, then come back and double that 4-measure phrase 3 times so you can stack your vocals? A lot of times they're not prepared to do that. They're just ready to, you know, park and bark.
So what do you do in your own program to prepare them for that? I mean, it's a daily teaching, right? But does your program look like that you're doing some classical literature, foreign languages, pop, musicals? Yeah, all of the above?
We start out every day. Each day we have a 16-measure sight reading example that they read. I use a Nashville-based system, not a solfege-based system, which puts me a little different from some of my peers, but I use that because it translates to chords. We do a big fall presentation with $30,000 worth of lights, and they all get to do a pop song, and they do like the same amount of time as that they would do on The Voice. And we do a spring musical every year. We've done Grease, Beauty and the Beast, and last year we were going to do Mary Poppins, and we were going to fly Mary Poppins across the stage and all that, and COVID of course hit. But we try to make sure that we prepare them for whatever avenue, whatever they want to do. If they want to do pop, we try to make it to where they understand that singing correctly transfers to that. If they want to do Broadway, we try to get them along that. We try to help them see their dreams, and then we try to push them towards that as best we can.
I love what you said, man, that not everybody really belongs or needs to aspire to be at the front of the stage, right? Andre and Joey, in your experience, right? There's more people not in the front of the stage as the stars. They're more in the choirs and production side of things, right? I mean, what kind of advice would you give people who, maybe need more work to do, or they kind of understand for themselves that that's not really what I want to do, is be the star, but how can I get to that back scene or that choir stage in Broadway or opera? Joey, I can start with you.
Well, I mean, I think that being an ensemble member is actually a way more steady career, because, that's 15, 20 people dancing, singing, and usually most people in the ensemble are going to be understudies for a principal role. So you have to be really good at all of it, and they're always looking for that. So I know people who literally bounce from show to show to show in all the ensembles, especially because they're good dancers and singers that can hold parts. It's always the worst when a singer or when a dancer like nails it through all the dance calls and then they keep them to sing and they're tone deaf. And you're like, oh God, we need you to be able to cover the lead as well. So when you can do all of that, like you're going to work constantly. Whereas principals, people love to see them, and certainly people, pay to see certain names, but you can't keep putting the same person in a lead role every show that comes around. Like, so at some point you might have a few hit shows, and then you're probably going to sit down for a while, and people that are principals don't go back to the ensemble. So it's, I think being an ensemble member is actually harder and there's more longevity sometimes in that.
Man, what's great tips. Andre, do you feel that in your opera world, man, that kind of that same feeling about lead stars?
Well, I think, I mean, people who love opera, people who want to be in opera, right. It's not just being a soloist. A lot of directors I know, a lot of stage managers I know started out studying voice. They started as singers. They wanted to be an opera star, and they got into the business and said, hey, I really love directing more than I love singing, and I want to work in opera. I think studying voice is a great place to start. I think being in the chorus is fabulous. Kind of like what Joey said. I mean, if you want something steady, if your focus is to raise a family and being in one place, definitely you get a chorus job. Some opera companies have full-time chorus positions. I mean, in Europe, the Metropolitan Opera, of course, you can support your family doing that, and you're in one place. You're not on the road all the time, and which is a very difficult part of being a soloist, a guest artist. But there are also resident positions as a soloist at opera companies. They call them fest singers, and so you can be in Hamburg or Zurich or wherever, and be a soloist, but be in residence. So you might not sing the lead roles all the time. You might have some smaller roles, but you're a soloist. And there are so many different options. I mean, people that love opera and want to work in opera, it's definitely possible. It's not just about being a soloist. It just depends what you want to do. And it's hard to know at the beginning what you want to do. You have to, at a certain point, say, okay, I'm really going to go for the soloist spot, or this is not what I want in my life right now. You just have to figure that stuff out. That's part of growing up. It's part of learning. Yeah.
All right, man, this is great stuff.
Kelly, I always thought that
go ahead, Greg.
See, I always thought I was going to get the lead role, but then I would roll in there, and I would be like 5'9" and look the way I look, and I would always get like the maniacal killer, or the funny part, or Mordred in Camelot, or something like that. I never.
You were typecast.
I never got Fanny. I never did. I probably would have been the big heavy dude that everybody makes fun of. That would have been my role. I'm pretty sure.
Classic Greg. All right, let's go and throw it to Kelly and Arnold. Could you guys introduce yourself? We'll start with Kelly. We'll throw it to Arnold, and then I'll go ahead and go over the next topic. Thank you. Kelly?
Sure. Okay, so my name is Kelly Singer. I am originally from Little Rock, Arkansas, but pretty much my whole family lives here in South Louisiana. I kind of sang in choir in high school and did church choirs here and there, but I did not want music to be my career. So I chose linguistics in college, but ultimately had a voice teacher like Greg who took a chance on me, really encouraged me to just try an opera career out, and it took me to New York. I moved there in 2017. to pursue my master's in voice, and ultimately started my career in opera in Manhattan. And now I'm in South Louisiana.
Because of COVID.
Yeah, similar holding pattern too, until COVID kind of resolved itself.
Arnold Rawls.
Hello. I took a different path to the operatic stage. I actually grew up in the program where Greg Oden is the choir director at West Monroe High School. I was in band and choir, and it was always the joke, and there was a lot of truth in it, that the musicians were in the band and the singers and just throats, as they call it, were in the choir. I want to emphasize how important it's been in my career that I can read music, and it's because of my band experience. You know, we'd laugh and say I was a band geek at West Monroe High School, and I was the president of the band geeks, you know, so I was like really into it, and had great training at West Monroe, and then went on and did an undergraduate career at Oklahoma Baptist University, then a master's at a seminary because I was going to be a minister of music. And then finished my doctorate at University of Oklahoma. And when I finished my education, that's when I started my professional career as an opera singer. And it was a tour with the National Opera Company out of Raleigh, North Carolina, singing in every school and retirement center on the East Coast, it seemed. You know, did hundreds of performances of 3 or 4 shows. And people ask where I learned how to sing. And I often refer to that tour that when I hit those boards singing and had to, at 9 in the morning, sing Tonio and Daughter of the Regiment, I had to learn how to sing. I had to learn how to sing these high C's with some people in the audience laughing, you know, a 4th grader, a 6th grader, you know what I mean? It's the hardest audience you've ever had, but the best audience.
Kitty concerts, yeah,
you've ever had. And a question I get a lot about, you know, well, what has been your most meaningful opera career experience? And it was with that touring group when we did the dress rehearsal of Daughter of the Regiment in the Governor's School for the Blind and Deaf. Did an opera for the School of the Blind and the Deaf. People in wheelchairs, some could hear it, some could see it. And then afterwards, walking out, when one of the students, his little sponsor, said, Tonio, which is my character, said, do you mind speaking to one of the students? And I said, sure. And he said, well, Eric, this little student has never met an opera star before. Do you mind if he touches your face? And he did. And of course, I'm crying, tears rolling down, because I was no opera star at all. But to that kid, I was. And I don't think I've had a more meaningful experience than that very moment, and see how music touches the lives of people. Even if they can't see it, they could hear it, they could feel it.
That's a different light bulb moment, right?
Oh, it was. Well, it's like, well, I could quit now because, you know, how am I going to top this? How do you top this?
Well, that now gives more purpose to your profession.
Yeah.
Than just
That's why
singing.
I always am willing to go to the local school and to speak, to sing, to work, you know, because that's where I came from, and it's very, very important. And you don't know who's going to be the next, you know, Andre or Kelly, because you can't predict who will have a career. Greg, you can concur with that. You think, well, so-and-so is going to have a huge career. They're lazy. They never did anything. And then someone that was a hard worker, which I was a hard worker, very average voice undergrad in the master's program. And it took a long time for my voice to develop. And my first professional gig was 32 years old. You know, that's, Kelly, that would be old for you and your father or your repertoire.
Yeah, always.
But not so much for me.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
I always tell my students this story when we talk about hard work is, you know, everybody, you know, when you look at the basketball world, everybody wants to find the next Michael Jordan. At one point, they asked Michael, and they said, who's the next Michael Jordan? And he said, there's only one person right now to me. And he said, Kobe Bryant. And Kobe was really still young at the time. And everybody's like, Kobe Bryant? Like, where would you get that at? And he said, he's the only one that has done the work. So alluding to the fact that maybe Kobe, he came in as a high school student, right, to the NBA, and so much work ahead of him, and he could have just rested on his laurels. But it's a great lesson, that hard work. Speaking of that, Kelly, I'm going to go to you. Education has been floated around this panel many times. You're probably the freshest to remember. What kind of education did you have to go through? What do you know now that you knew that you had to go through to be where you are now for continued success? And what are some things that maybe woken you to, man, if I didn't do this, I wouldn't be as prepared to get these gigs as I am now? So can you kind of talk about education?
Right, absolutely. I think I will say the expectation is probably very different for those who want to do musical theater versus opera. With musical theater, it's traditionally you start much earlier in your college, your undergrad experience. But because operatic voices tend to have a tendency to develop a little bit later as your hormones change, there's a lot of factors that go into that. So I mean, as soon as I decided that I wanted to do this career, it just became obvious that getting a grad degree was the next step. And it was great because I met so many amazing people and got a lot of different kinds of exposure in grad school, but especially living in New York. It was like, I mean, that's the epicenter of where Broadway and opera kind of are in the States right now. But it also, not only are you really head over heels involved in academia in a grad degree, you are also expected to perform, all the time. There are performance requirements that are sometimes as important as getting, the best grade you can in a class. So there's a lot of high expectations there for sure.
So I know that you've dipped into some dancing experience, and you kind of laughed about that, but really, if you're going to be in both worlds, how important it is, and what kind of styles do you have to learn?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, like Greg said, it's important to be as diverse as you can in your studies, but also like what you are able to bring to the table. The more you can do, or the more you're specialized in, the more you stand out in an audition. So that's really important. I studied a ton of ballroom in my grad degree, and that was really helpful because it's easy to just be able to pop into an audition or pop into a production and say, yeah, I know how to tango. Not just say like, oh yeah, I do salsa nights on Fridays. Like there's actual instruction that goes into it. I did a lot of ballet. That's really important too, to just be able to know what muscle groups people are talking about too. I mean, you find out a lot about your body and how to take care of it by doing movement classes and dance classes as well. And that's really important for singing.
When I first got to my current school, in middle school band, my next door neighbor was a choir teacher, love her to death, a longtime vocal educator, Matilda Martin, who's recently retired. And, you get prepared for assessment, right? What we called festival back then. And she would always have to do a foreign language tune. And the kids, middle school, man, they didn't know why they had to do that. But why is it important to kind of grow up in doing that foreign language experience? And how many languages do you know for fun, or because of your craft and knowing that I have to do this?
Well, I definitely had to educate myself a lot in the four, I guess we call them the basic Romance languages. In school, we study French diction, we study German, Italian, English diction. You wouldn't think of, but I mean, it's important to know how different groups of people speak English for accent training, or just to know how to sing it a different way. So yeah, I would say language, studying languages is like a really important part of going into any performance career. But also because this is an industry that's very global. I mean, yeah, a lot of people speak English in Europe now, but it's important to know, if you're going to be like Andre, if you're going to be traveling in Switzerland, you got to know how to speak at least French and German. So, or get by.
Yeah, gospel singer Donnie McClurkin talks about that in a lot of times. You can't go to Africa with our American ways and think that we're just going to present ourselves that way, and people are going to be receptive to that. You have to learn the language and present yourself to those people who your audience is in the first place. Arnold, continuing education. What have you found that, since you've learned the craft, right? I mean, in your experience, what does okay, I've arrived, I'm there, I've got enough gigs to sustain me, but there's got to be a continuing education, right? What do you do in your craft to continue learning as an opera singer?
Well, I think there's never a point that we singers stop taking voice. I still take voice and have a voice teacher. Matter of fact, there's several cooks in my kitchen. And I think as we grow older, we grow complacent. So we're either getting better or we're plateaued off, at which point we start getting worse. So continuing to sing is, and study is very, very important. Also the networking, very, very important. As a matter of fact, we did a rehearsal Zoom 3 or 4 days ago. That's where I met Kelly. And it seemed that I know her voice teacher really well, Shirley Close. So I fired Shirley off a message, said, hey, I just met this Kelly girl, Kelly Singer. I didn't know her. And she said, well, you don't know her yet. Said it's a major personality with a world-class voice. And knowing that, now Kelly's like in my mind here, it's just part of that networking thing. I've heard of Andre before because of the Louisiana connection. I guess Dennis Jesse or Michael Borowitz, somebody down there in LSU area, because all the Louisiana singers, they grow them well down there. We just all know each other or know of each other. And as important as auditions and continued training is, it's more important to be a great colleague and to network with stage directors and conductors, because many times it's a stage director or a conductor that is casting a show. And it is not all about your talent. There's 35 sopranos that can sing the role that Kelly's doing. And do they want a tall one, a short one, a medium-sized one, a blonde, a brunette? It all comes into play, especially musical theater typecasting. So same thing with the opera world. And I'm getting off the topic, but I'm constantly training so that every time Greg Oden hears me, which is like every 2 or 3 years, that I will be better than I was before, instead of, oh dear, that voice is gone, become we won't fill in the blank, but become that person who can't get off the stage, Liza Minnelli. It just happens.
Well, is it like, the Drew Brees quarterback noodle arm, where the older you get, even though you're getting more mature, that you do start to lose some of what you had?
Oh yeah, I find singers, of course, Kelly and Andre are just babies. They're like 16 years old. I mean, they're young. I'm a vintage opera singer. I think all of a sudden I'm competing with 28-year-old kids for the role of Otello, which requires a very mature voice. But sometimes something younger, cuter, taller, sweeter gets cast because of whatever. I don't even think I answered your question.
No, you did. Absolutely.
I did.
Greg, do you vocal train still, or are you kind of?
Well, yeah, I still have people that listen to me sing, but for me, mine is more or less, I'm good for 8 notes and then I get out of the way, because I try to make sure that I give my students an idea of what I think it should sound like, and then I try to train my ear to listen to where they're going. I do sort of agree with Arnold in the fact that when I was probably 18, 19 years old, I wanted to be Steve Perry from Journey. I wanted to have the long hair and sing Love and Touch and Squeezing every night. But you can blow those notes. And I had my college my college voice teacher tell me that he wanted me to do a career as a singer as well. But that was not the road that was laid out before me. But I hope as an educator that I can certainly pick from a basket of really ripe fruit and help say, look, you really need to think about this seriously, because sometimes it's just that one little word of encouragement to someone that was maybe thinking about doing it that will propel them into a field that they will embrace and be successful at, and degrees of successfulness. We don't all have to be Pavarotti, you know.
Yeah, but Greg, you're being honest and modest. Greg married a great singer, so he pretty much lives and sleeps with his voice teacher.
Yes, and it is fun to ride around in the car when she's rehearsing. I'll just say that. You know, you're not going to hear anything other than that beautiful soprano voice, and it's amazing. I'm always just totally covet people like Arnold and Kelly and Andre and Joey as well. I mean, I wish I could play like Joey, and I wish I could sing like Arnold. And I listen to my wife and I go, you know, there's just some of us that are blessed and others of us that toil just trying to help people get there. And as an educator, I think that's equally as important. I would hate to be a stumbling block in front of somebody that was thinking of a career and me be the person say, honey, it's just not for you. Because they could then turn around and become truly, truly successful just by working hard.
I'm going to come back to that, Greg, because that's an important factor of the role of a teacher to that impressionable young musician. I know a couple of you have some stories about both sides of the issue of what happens when somebody tells me this versus that other kind of, you know, situation. I'm going to throw it to Andre and Joey. You know, you kind of think about this path, you want to arrive. Man, what is it really like, Joey? You're in New York City, man. That's got to be one of the coolest things in the world. Andre, you rattled off probably about 5 European names that I never heard of before that I would only dream of visiting one time in my life. And you guys are living the travel, right? Just the superstar of this life. Man, what is it really like, Joey, to be in that world? It's got to be one of the coolest things ever, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, it's a dream come true to be, you know, it sounds corny, but honestly, it's true. I mean, it's what I love. It's what I wanted to do, and I'm doing it, or will again at some point. And that's, you know, that's what's made the last, you know, year plus so difficult. It you know, for me, it wasn't about the, you know, financial aspect and, you know, all that stuff. The fact that, like, you know, you take a musician or a performer's, you know, platform where they do that, and it's like, you know, what do you have left? You know, I sat for the last year plus saying, like, what's my purpose now? Because all I've ever known was this. And, you know, you work so hard to get to a certain level, and then through no fault of your own, you and everyone else who's also worked to get to that level, it's just like wiped away. And you're just sitting there being like, oh, so what am I now? Like, who am I, you know, without this? So yeah, I will certainly never take it for granted.
What does your day look like? I mean, you know, you have matinees and evening shows, right? No, just not talking COVID. What does your day look like from wake up to sundown?
Sure. Wake up. I'm an early bird these days, and it depends. If it's a Wednesday or a Saturday, you have 2 shows, 2 and 7 or 2 and 8. Run home between to walk the dog, and on Thursdays, sometimes Tuesdays, you'll have understudy rehearsals or auditions for replacements, or you'll just be doing auditions for other shows or whatever else. So at the end of the day, like, the amount of hours you're actually working for me, not that much, you know, not that much. And show comes down at 10:45. I'm home by 11:15, and I'm old and I get in the bed.
So playing the same books every two, I mean, does that get taxing, man? What is, you know, are you constantly looking for that next show once you get tired of Beetlejuice?
For me, no, because with the way that shows come and go, if you find yourself in a position where you're on a show that's running that long, you have the option to stay till the bitter. I mean, there's people that have been, the keyboard players at Wicked have been there since it opened 16
Wow.
years ago or whatever.
Wow.
And one of the guys at Phantom, he's been there since day one. He's, 100 years old. But that's his gig, and he earned that. And I've always said, because people always ask, that's one of the questions I get the most. People say, don't you get sick of playing the same thing every night? And I say, no, I'm happy to play the same thing and make that good paycheck. And, I can do other things on the side. And at some point, every show closes. And if it doesn't, then you're financially really set. And I would hope that you don't complain that, you've got that bank account going by playing that same show every night. No, I love it. I'll stay on the show as long as somebody wants me to.
I see Kelly just drooling, just thinking about her future in New York City and what was lost to COVID and the aspirations that she has, man.
Yeah, but actors don't get that luxury. Actors sign, an ensemble member can stay kind of a while, but like principals and stuff, they get, maybe a year out of a show if it runs that long.
Wow.
And then they move on to something else where they recast because audiences want to see different people. But for us little unsung heroes downstairs in the pit, especially through our union, you get that gig. That gig's yours. It's very hard to get rid of someone, and rightfully so for us. I mean, we'll stay there as long as you let me, basically.
Hey, Andre, how cool is it, man, just to literally travel the world, see the places that you've been? Can you talk a little bit about that? And then what is your day look like on an opera day, right? When you have a show that night, what kind of voice training do you do? And then what do you do when there's not a show, like you're in between gigs? Can you kind of talk about those things?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I love to travel. I love seeing new places. I love revisiting old places that I like. So it's really a pleasure. And even though normally on a job, you don't really have much time to sightsee. People tell me, "Oh, you're so lucky. You're on vacation all the time." It's not vacation. Sometimes we rehearse 10 or 12 hours a day, and it can be very stressful. And so usually you go to rehearsal and you go back to your apartment and you sleep or you eat, and then you don't want to do anything. You're tired. But every once in a while between shows, I'll have some days off, after the show goes up, and you can do a little sightseeing or something like that. My performance days, if it's an evening show, I just sleep in. I'm a night owl, so I like to sleep late. I sleep in and I eat. I don't do anything different. I don't sing before my show. During the day, I'll go in the evening and vocalize in my dressing room before the show. But I really don't do anything special to prepare my voice. I try to make sure that I live my life as normally as I can all the time, in a way that keeps me healthy vocally. I think it's, at least for me, it's not good to have special routines for the days I sing, because what if I have to eat a certain food the day I sing, but I'm in China and I can't find that food, or drink a certain water, or this stuff. I just try to be able to sing in any situation, any vote. You wake up some mornings, you feel like crap. It doesn't matter what you do. Your voice is just tired or sick. So you just have to do it with what you have that day. And so I try not to have special routines. And a student wrote to me on Instagram a couple of weeks ago asking me, what do you eat? Do you eat something special before you sing? Do you avoid dairy? And it's like, no, I avoid it. You don't know what has dairy in it. Sometimes you go to a restaurant, it's just too stressful for me to monitor all that. And I kind of like I'm usually dry. I have bad allergies. So I take a lot of allergy medication. I like the extra mucus. It's a good lubrication. The dairy is good. So yeah, but no, it's a great life. It is. The only little downfall is it's hard to not be able to sleep in your own bed for 9 or 10 months out of the year. That's pretty rough. But that's just it's not even a downside. It's just, you miss your family, you miss your home, but you have so many other exciting experiences. But when I'm not singing, to answer the rest of your question, I am in Louisiana now, and I like to fish. I hang out. You know, I live in Henderson. I live right by the Chapelaya Basin, so I have a houseboat out there. I like to spend my time. I like to cook and eat that good Louisiana food.
Yeah, send me your address whenever we're done, man. I'll go hang out with you on the boat. That's
Sounds
great,
good.
man. Hey, do you miss the life right now? You know, we're past a year past COVID. You know, quarantining. Do you miss the life? Is that something you're itching to get back to?
Yeah, well, you know, I was actually in the middle of COVID. I made my debut in Zurich. That was in September. So I had a break, but I have had some work, and yeah, I'm ready to go. You know, I'm rested. Before COVID, I had been working nonstop. I mean, last year I was in Italy for 2 months. I was in China. I was, all over I was in France for 2 months. It was a very hectic year with not much time in between jobs. So when January came around, I was really feeling it, and I was supposed to go to France for 3 months in the spring of last year. And so I can't lie that when it all got canceled, I kind of had a little relief there, but no, I'm ready to go. I'm supposed to be in France in 2 weeks, and
Wow.
hopefully it hasn't gotten canceled yet, so maybe it'll actually happen.
Hey, Arnold, this just popped into my head. How long does it take? While Andre was talking, I'm thinking all the shows that you're doing, and they're going to be different productions. How long does it take to learn a role of one opera show?
I was hoping you would not ask that question, because it should take, in the repertoire that I do, say Radames, Manrico, 6 months to a year to really learn the role well. I wait until the last minutes. You know, like Andre said, he's got to go in 2 weeks. I might open the score, and then have to really, really work 14, 16 hours a day, getting it done. That is not how you learn roles and stuff. It's what I tell my students, but practice what you preach isn't always true. So as I've gotten older, I've started preparing sooner, but there's never enough time to prepare the role for me. Where I learned my lesson was in Switzerland. I was doing an opera I won't name in a place that I won't name, and I had learned the first and second and third acts, and I'd worry about the fourth act, when we got in the middle, because rehearsal 6 or 8 weeks. I could learn Tristan in that time. So I just wouldn't worry about that. So when I got there, the first day of rehearsal, the stage director said, well, so-and-so's not here and so-and-so's not here, so we're starting in the fourth act. I was like, yeah. I mean, I couldn't even hum that thing, let alone sing it. So I had to frantically go back to the room and try to learn it with a day's notice. And let me tell you, I should have been fired from that gig, but luckily I wasn't. And so now I start at the end when I'm learning my roles. Or at the end, go to the beginning, because the beginning is always a little more solid for us. But working with a coach, like if I were doing a Broadway show, I would call Joey and say, hey, I'm working on, Phantom or whatever, and then work with someone like him. They're not teaching me the music because there's not enough hours in the day to do that. But getting the style and getting the tempo and all that's just running through it. It's very important to work with coaches, accompanists, conductors, and we end up spending our fee in our preparation. I don't know about you, Kelly or Andre, but I end up spending a lot of money on preparing my role. Now, Andre said he's an organist and pianist, so he probably doesn't have to rely so much on that coach pianist, but I'm not a pianist at all. I can play a little bit, but my roles, to learn my roles and stuff, I can read it, but I need help, someone playing the piano, and usually that person who can play the classical stuff, they know the repertoire, and that is, I pay the coach I like the best in Chicago, I pay him $95 an hour just to accompany me.
Wow.
And that does sound expensive. Now you can get someone cheap for $60. That's still expensive. Now, Joey, in your world, I'm sure you know, musical theater people. It's just a different world, you know, as far as working with singers. You know, we're expected to show up the first day of rehearsal, knowing it cold, knowing the language, knowing the music, knowing the style. I mean, knowing it cold first day. That was not my experience when I showed up doing some of the musical theater stuff. You know, they want you to know it, but they will help you and teach it to you. Not in the opera world. That's just not what they do. Too many people are wanting your job, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, and for you, I mean, it's so different because those are established pieces of work that, you know, there are published scores and recordings and whatever. Like you can show up to know that and to work on it. But for musical theater, you know, most of the time you're doing a new project, so there's nothing to learn, you know. So you show up on day one and everyone learns at the same rate, which is a 4-week rehearsal, 2-week tech, and then you're in previews making changes for about a month until opening night. But so yeah, there's not a lot of prep work you can do because it's not an established, you know, especially if you're in the original company or something. Like you're the one that everyone from now on is going to listen to and base what they do in a recreation production off of.
Yeah.
You know, now, I mean, West Side Story, there's no excuse to show up and not night, but
I would love to do that with an opera, but quite frankly, I'd rather be run over by a bus than sing someone's new opera.
Hey, Kelly, you kind of have some recent experiences, and our audience, hopefully we're going to have some young aspiring vocalists listen to this 12 for 12. You know, you've been through some experiences. I auditioned for a major role, a Phantom of the Opera. You know, what was that like? What did you have to work on? What was it like in the audition? And what did you get any feedback? You know, what is that like to go through that whole experience, which is, to me, I'd be scared to death.
I will say I was also scared to death. My experiences auditioning for Broadway have been very different for opera because, and not to say that I'm any kind of expert in that because I have done way more opera auditions than I have Broadway, but that was very different in that in an opera audition, you usually don't have a dance callback. And you're not usually asked to sing the same 16 bars like 4 different times for the same 3 people. Like to me, I'm like, please let me showcase something else in my voice. But yeah, I was auditioning for Christine was big and really intimidating also because I was very young when I did that. So, you know, the more auditions you do, the more you learn about yourself and the industry. You see the same people kind of at the more audition circuits that you do. So yeah, I will definitely say I'm getting scared just thinking about that.
Did you get any feedback, or is it just yes or no?
It was a yes or no. For Broadway,
so how do you,
most of the opera auditions I've had at least some kind of feedback.
Well, how do you learn?
You know,
Is that going to those coaches that was talked about here before?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I will say coaches are your best tool. There's also so many online resources now to be able to study music in a different way that I've utilized. Honestly, though, my best feedback has been from doing competitions. And that is something universal, whether you're wanting to go Broadway route or opera, doing competitions. And if you excel at them, you can make some money and you get really good feedback from the panels that you do. So, I mean, great. those are one night things that I feel like I have learned so much more from those experiences in some ways. But you also learn how to focus on one role, one song, making your best impression in 4 minutes and 30 seconds or less. And then you're done. So that has also been really good audition training too.
Before we get to our lightning round of questions, Greg, I want to go back to what you said, because I know there's going to be some teachers here. You know, when you said that, man, that was so impactful to me about the role of a teacher. And we don't want to be that one person who discourages somebody from fulfilling a dream when that actually could be possible if they worked at it. And I'm thinking back, if I ever said anything to discourage a student, and I probably did many times, and it makes me feel terrible that I would have done that. Joey, Andre, you guys have polar stories of that, that advice from a teacher that one of you was, yay, rah, rah, you're going to do great. And the other was maybe not so favorable, but you both used it to your advantage. Andre, can you go first about your experiences? Not to say that we're going to badmouth teachers, but, you were given advice that you really, had to think twice about.
Yeah, well, my teacher in college told me, he said, you're never going to have a career in opera. You don't have the voice for opera, And, but at 18, maybe I didn't. Bass voice takes a long time to mature. All voices take time to mature. And so he had no idea of knowing what I was capable of. I would say that, for a long time I resented that, but I see that, that kind of comment, I'm pretty stubborn. It made me want it more. It made me fight harder in this career. So, I don't want to give him any credit. He doesn't deserve any. But I think that maybe it did help me some along the way. I've had a good path. I don't. Everything happened the way it should have. I would just. So many great artists and great people have similar stories of somebody telling them, you can't do it. And it just made them want it more and fight harder for it. And so, maybe that's just how it happens sometimes. But I would tell teachers, you don't know. No teacher knows. No teacher can ever know what somebody has inside of them. It's the individual person. Some people don't have great voices and have great careers because they want it so bad. They work so hard, and they can make something of themselves, even with maybe a mediocre voice. It's not all about voice. It's it's about what's inside of you. So that's what I would say.
Andre, if we could fit all of that, what you said, onto a coffee cup or a T-shirt, we would all have this lesson, man. And a lot of it, let's be honest, it's here, South Louisiana, Cecilia blood running in through you. That who are you going to tell me, right? Because
exactly.
we have that a part of us, but just that instinct of, no, I can do better, and I'm going to use that to my advantage. But man, that's just great words of wisdom. We want to play that back, right? So those of you who are listening, play that back, listen to that a few times, because that's the inspiration right there that we all need to hear. Teachers, students, all of the above. Joey, can you kind of talk about your experiences and inspiration when you were a young lad?
Yeah, absolutely. It ran the gamut for me of people saying like, oh my God, you have such a great future ahead, all the way to the, opposite, where I had people, one was a voice teacher at the college, said, you shouldn't even move to New York, you'll never make it. And I remember she said to me, she's like, I would never hire you to play my classical rep. And it took all I had not to look at her and say, well, you don't know how to belt, and I don't really want to play for you anyway. So, it just person, I was like, yeah, you're right. And I wouldn't be hired for that. And that's fine. But that doesn't mean that I don't have a future in something. And I'm stubborn too. Like, you tell me no, and I'm going to show you I can. I've been that way since I was a kid. There was also a possibility that with the negative, people that said you won't make it, I also needed to find out myself. I'm going to go to New York and find out, like, can I do this? Maybe I can. I don't know, but I'm never going to know unless I go and try. And at the end of the day, none of us are Miss Cleo, and as teachers and people that inspire other people, it's not for us to tell somebody else that people don't have a career in anything. People that I've encountered, that would say, oh, I'm going in for so-and-so role, and I told them, that person will never play that role a day in their lives. And what did I know? They ended up getting the job for whatever reason. So, like, we don't know. We can't predict what other people do. So it's only up to us and to educate and say, okay, if that's what you want, go for it. I think that tough love is good, but it also, again, like, we're not judge and jury, and you can't tell other people what they do. So, encourage as best as you can, and let the chips fall where they may.
Brad, I will say this about Joey. My wife would come home and tell me there's this fabulous kid that can do stuff that is amazing. And Joey, like a young lady would walk into a voice lesson wanting to sing My Daddy's Son, and she would be just a little bit too low to sing it, and she would say, well, we'd have to find another song. And Joey goes, no, I can raise that. I can raise that. And he just would do it on site and raise it, and then made the vocalist sound humble. So his talent was noticeable at an early age. My wife was bragging on it long before he even left to go to Florida.
But you
Greg.
realize, as we're talking, I just realized something, Greg, or as I always, Mr. Oden. It didn't even occur to me literally until just right now that freshman year of high school, I played for Godspell, which was the first theatrical production I've ever played in my life. But with you conducting, that was the first time I'd ever actually played with any conductor. So you were the first conductor that I ever played under.
Yeah, and I was 12. I was young.
Well, if you were 12, then I was, 11.
Well, he was phenomenal. He was phenomenal.
Isn't it funny? I mean, here we are, and like that was 1996, I think.
I just came in to conduct the show. He was literally the rehearsal piece that he touched all these high school kids their part, and then I came in with an orchestra and did the show.
I'd never played in an orchestra. I was like, what do you mean you want me to look up while you're waiting for that?
I was like, look at me, Joey. Look at me.
All right, guys, we're gonna go through a lightning round. So here's how this will work. I'll say your name, and then I'll say the topic, then I'll say your name, and the first thing that comes to mind. Okay, you ready? And some of it might be a little more difficult because we're all experienced and we've experienced different things. Okay, so
filter, I might get in trouble.
No, it's gonna hopefully be as G as possible.
Got it.
Favorite mainstream artist? Arnold.
Pavarotti. He's dead.
Joey.
Currently, Sarah Bareilles.
Andre.
Whitney Houston.
Kelly.
Joan Sutherland.
Greg.
I have to go back to Steve Perry.
All right, there you go.
Voice.
All right, video games or Netflix? Joey.
Ooh, mostly Netflix, but if it's a Lego video game, I'm all.
Kelly.
Video games all day.
Okay. Andre.
Netflix.
Greg.
Started out on Pong, but Netflix now.
Arnold.
Netflix, Hulu.
There you go. Favorite Broadway show? Greg.
Oh man, Phantom, Wicked. It's like asking me to name my favorite child. It's just,
I know. I'll go. Mine is The Music Man. Arnold.
Gypsy.
Joey.
God. Gypsy, Les Mis, Red.
Man, I forgot about Les Mis.
Miss Saigon, next.
Andre.
Let's let me get out.
That's got to be one, and then Music Man 2. Kelly.
Music Man and Phantom of the Opera.
Okay. Favorite place you visited? Kelly.
Prague.
Ooh. Joey.
Tokyo.
Andre.
South Africa.
Arnold.
Sydney, Australia.
Greg.
Lucerne, Switzerland.
Nice. Bugs Bunny or Mickey Mouse? Joey. I see it. I probably shouldn't even called you. Arnold.
Who are they?
What?
No, I would have to say I couldn't stand either one of them. It would have to be that
Come on, man.
Guy, Bob SquarePants.
Okay. I'm disappointed. Greg.
Bugs.
Kelly.
Mickey Mouse.
Andre.
Mickey.
Favorite music decade? Andre.
80s.
Joey.
Late 90s.
Okay, Kelly.
80s.
Wow, Greg.
Beatles.
Arnold.
70s.
Okay, mine would be 20s or 50s. I would be toggling between those two. Coolest famous person you've ever met, Arnold.
Placido Domingo.
Oh wow, you're kidding me?
Yeah, I
Wait,
won't tell you the story, but yes.
Okay, yeah. Joey.
Oh God.
You can name more than one.
I say I have a lot. Katy Perry, Catherine O'Hara, Sarah Bareilles, Gina Davis, the Jonas Brothers, RuPaul. Yeah,
That's diverse. Andre.
we got a lot of visitors.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh wow, you're kidding me.
Lit. That's so cool.
Man, this could be a whole nother webinar on this topic here. Kelly.
Jimmy Fallon.
Wow, this is so cool. Greg.
I actually got to sing Lady Marmalade with Patti LaBelle.
Oh,
You win.
Yeah, with Patti LaBelle.
I don't know. Dame Edna is perhaps one of my favorites.
Oh yeah.
my goodness. All right, this is really important. We'll close with this, and I'll do some wrap up. Biggest tip you would give a young aspiring vocalist who wants to be where you're at, Andre?
Hey, work hard and don't give up.
Joey.
I would say the only opinion of you that matters is your own.
Arnold.
Learn Italian as early as you can.
Awesome. Greg.
Work hard, understand that teachers are human, and seek a second opinion sometimes.
This is so cool. Kelly.
Trust yourself, take care of yourself, and don't give up.
Man, we could, we try to keep it to an hour, and we're over that for sure. But just such a we had a few topics that I skimmed over. A lot of it you covered already, but what a great, I know you guys would be awesome. Thank you, Greg, for giving me these names. I know you had a great, kind of like that degrees between Kevin Bacon. I know Kelly from us worshiping in, church together. Her voice, phenomenal. And then got to know a lot of you from that Greg Oden experience. So thank you guys so much. For you guys in the audience out there who are listening, I hope you take this for what it's worth. Reach out to these people. I reached out, and they were immediately ready to share their experiences, their wealth of information on the business itself. What does it take? I know that if you reach out to them, they'd be equally as kind to you guys. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. Go on our website, lmeamusic.org. We have a couple of other 12 for 12s that we've done already on different topics ranging from social emotional learning to diversity in education. We're going to do this monthly series, and this life series will also branch into life as a community band member. What happens after the playing is all done, and I just want to play for fun. Life in the military. There's some things to learn outside of what we do when we finish high school graduation or college graduation. Thank you, panelists. You guys are awesome. Maybe one day we can come back and do a part 2 to this, and after COVID, and see what life is like and what you've been doing from then on. Yeah, that'd be really cool. So thank you, guys. Any parting shots before we go?
Thank you, Brett.
Greg?
Thank you so much, you guys. It was so nice to meet all of you. And yeah, to the people watching this, there's so many different opinions and ideas on how to make your career happen that are going to fly at you. Reach out to any one of us and ask questions, because that's the only way you're going to get real and honest answers is from people like us who do this. So yeah, I'm on Instagram.
Hey, the biggest advice I can give anyone, if you want to be an opera singer, is do not choose a school because of its reputation. You choose a voice teacher and go to that school. If it's in Bug Tussle, go to that teacher.
For
See, we
musical
could.
theater, for musical theater, pick a school with a roster of students that you can follow their career.
Man, you see, we could just keep going.
I know,
Right? It's just so
it's
cool.
so fascinating to me how different yet similar the two worlds are.
So we've settled it. We will come back for part 2 post-COVID and talk more about this, branch out our information. But thank you guys. You're awesome. I can't wait till we at one day meet in person post-COVID and have some time together and congratulate each other and high five. So love you. Thank you so much. Everybody out there, hope you enjoyed this. See you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.